So this is another OpenChain webinar. We're going to be in case study land today. We're going to have a look at how ZF went through third-party certification to adopt ISO IEC 5230 in collaboration with TIMETOACT. It's an important thing for us. A lot of people say, how do I do this? What specifically have people done? And every case study we get illustrates a clear example of a real-world solution. It's also interesting how they illustrate shared understanding. If you look at a pile of our case studies, you see so many common threads. And because we cross so many industries, that's an important indicator of the things that work for everyone. Now, before we get started, I'm going to show the antitrust policy notice. We show this at the beginning of every Linux Foundation meeting. You can find the full antitrust policy on the Linux Foundation website. And if you're from a member company, you can ask questions of our counsel, Andrew Updegrove. Now, with that, really, it's my main place to say we will have Q&A. As we go, you can type questions in the chat. At the end, we can have live Q&A with voice. So please feel free. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. We're going to have the recording of the webinar as a long-term artifact, but the delightful thing for those live is that you can ask Sarah from ZF or Simon from TIMETOACT about details of what happened and why it happened. And speaking of Sarah and speaking of Simon, those are the two stars of today. So Sarah has been leading tremendous efforts in ZF, building not just some open source activities, but an open source mindset. So I've had the good fortune to work with Sarah quite a few times. And in everything we've done together and in the communication we've done outwards to the community together, she's always been just fantastic at having that enthusiasm of why collaboration is important and how it can be done well. And Simon is much the same. Simon and I have had a chance to collaborate, I think, for a couple of years almost now. And Simon is one of those people who is quiet, thoughtful, and effective. Also one of those people who is perfectly happy to have endless questions and to work on details in a smooth and stable manner. So he's a fantastic person in a field where we're looking at complex processes, we're looking at people worried about risk. And most importantly, Simon is also a great community person. We've had him on our calls occasionally. We've had plenty of chance to work together as we've done stuff around ZF certification and announcement and preparing this webinar. So we're very fortunate to have these two speaking to you, even though it's summertime. And technically, we should all be on a beach. But here we are, and here we go. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sarah and Simon. For those of you who are live, there's a tiny pause now as we change the slide share, we start the new one, and then we'll begin talking. For those of you who are
Right.
watching the recording, you won't hear this bit.
I hope you're able to see the screen now.
Yes, the screen is showing perfectly. So at your own pace, it's ready to go.
Okay, then welcome to this webinar today. We take you on a journey where we have a short introduction already covered by Shane, where I will tell you a bit about the importance of the ISO ISC 520 in the automotive industry. I'm gonna take you through our OSPO journey, which ultimately led to the certification this year. Simon is going to tell you a bit about how the certification process works, which challenges we faced, and how we did solve them. Then I will show you and tell you how some resources of the OpenChain project and the inner source commons helped us to achieve where we are now. And we're going to have a look to the gap analysis TIMETOACT and ZF did as a preparation. After that, we will have a lessons learned session, and we can provide you some closing thoughts, as well as we have the chance to have the Q&A. So speaking about the importance of the ISO 520 in the automotive industry, as we just learned, the ISO is the standard that ensures that organizations adhere to the open source licenses, but also ensuring the proper use and the proper management of the software assets. The governance framework is essential for maintaining the integrity in our software supply chains, and it was also clear that once we have software coming from various sources and other standards and norms like CRA or DORA kick in, it will be essential to know what exactly is in your software and in your asset management framework. Therefore, this was one of the reasons ZF decided to build an open source program office and to establish this kind of governance framework throughout the organization. And you may know it, ZF is the second largest tier one in the industry, currently with over 150,000 employees worldwide. So this definitely had an impact to our processes, to our people, and to the culture, which is still one of the major issues we have. But things take time, especially change management processes or changes at all are taking their time, and it needs the time. You need to give the people time to adapt to the new way of working. Coming back to supply chain risk management, which is an essential part where I see the ISOs are not really helping us to secure our supply chain from our third-party suppliers, not only open source, but also commercial ones, towards the outbound documentation to our OEM. So on the one hand, it reduces the risk of license misuse and legal issues, but also it helps us to improve the quality of what we give out to our customers. In total, the ISO 5230 helps us to foster trust along the supply chain. Not only on a license perspective, but also on the security practices. I know there is another standard approaching for open source security, but nevertheless, whenever you have proper asset management and software, you will be informed by all the major tools I know doing SCAs, a static code analysis in the license management area, whether an open source component has some built-in or delivered with vulnerabilities. And this definitely helps you to make your product even more secure. If you know it, then you can take the countermeasures. And having this framework established with all the processes, the templates, the roles, the authorities, all the things you need to have in order to have such a framework established will help you to make it as efficient as possible. The next chapter is about what ZF did in the last few years. Not everything was communicated on LinkedIn, unfortunately, if you ask me, but we will see that there was a lot of work done and a lot of effort spent in order to create this program office as it is now. The general or generic benefits for having open source in the automotive industry is flexibility, is cost effectiveness. Of course, it's innovative, it's community driven. There's a lot of communication and exchange of ideas happening in the community, and that's really lovely. And you can build the software you will need. You're not depending on any vendors delivering a fancy kind of closed source software you will never have a chance to modify to your needs without paying a lot of money. But also, as you know, there are some risks. For example, the compliance aspect, you need to comply to the license obligation. You have potential vulnerabilities in the code you need to be aware of. And of course, sometimes you may encounter some integration and compatibility issues. But nevertheless, a structured governance approach is important, and so they've decided to have the OSPO with four core responsibilities, which is the compliance part, ensuring that all the open source code we use is treated in a proper way, like attribution, like notice file, which are incorporated in packages, like references in the documentation, and soon to be rolled out, also a portal where the community can download the source code, which we have in some of our products. We have the community part where we are building and nurturing relationships. We started to do this, yeah, I would say 1.5 to 2 years ago, and slowly but steadily we're doing more. For example, hosting our open source summit annually now, and I'm lucky to tell you here that we have found a lot of interesting speakers, and I keep you posted on the event update. In the consumption part, we have the strategies for the safe use and the alignment with the business objectives. And in the contribution part, it's what we want to give back to the community. Where do I see an OSPO in the supply chain? Well, an OSPO can do much more than just providing the proper use of open source code. It also can help you to align with your OEMs in regards to their requirements, but also with your suppliers. When you have certain requirements to your suppliers, what do you expect from your suppliers when they use open source code? So what, for example, we build in our global policy for supplier management and in the supplier management organization, there's a document called Software Development Interface Agreement, which regulates the jobs and the responsibilities between us as the customer and our suppliers. And one chapter in this document is about open source, so we clearly highlight what we want to see, like an SBOM, a Cyclone DX, or SPDX format, like a proper documentation, like a license bill of materials, for example, and that we expect that also our suppliers have a governance framework up to a certain degree of maturity. Best case, they would have been certified as well for the ISO standard, but as it is not so widespread yet, we did not formalize this as a hard requirement. Instead, we have the chance to make a process audit on the supplier side and see where they are, where we would have our doubts, and to develop the suppliers. So it's an open collaboration there as well, helping them with the weaknesses we identified as weaknesses and close them over time. We can help but also we can help our management in selecting the open source according to our strategies. You may have it read in the news that ZF is taking or that ZF participates in the SDV development program. We just released some more repositories which you can find on the website as well. And these engagement are strategic decisions, and the OSPO can foster this. We can support with selecting strategic open source tools or components. And after these have been selected, we can manage them for vulnerabilities, for community activity, But also, if for a certain point in time no commits have been done, we would do a recommendation. This component might be outdated, or at least it's something the development teams afterwards should have a look to. Community engagement, I mentioned. At a certain point in time, some of our projects which are intending to go open source think about, is there a way to monetize open source? And yes, there are ways, be it with offering additional supports or warranties, or having an open core plus proprietary plugin principles. There are multiple ways to earn money with open source, and these are the discussions where an OSPO definitely can support. And of course, our main business is still reviewing the code which we have in our products for criticality, for security, for being up to date, or patch requirements, and push this towards the project. Overall, I see we need a holistic governance approach, and holistic means we have interfaces. We have the norms kicking in, but we also have cybersecurity, where we need a close handshake with the cybersecurity teams. And when I mean close, I mean close, because our cybersecurity team and the OSPO, for example, interconnect latest at the so-called cybersecurity assessment, which is quite at the end of life cycle of any cybersecurity related product. And during this assessment, our cybersecurity assessors ask our development projects, hey guys, do you have either an evidence that no open source is included, else do you have a complete list of open source which is included, and a statement which potential issues or vulnerabilities are included in these components, and your measures to reduce or to close them. We have, of course, legal support. Since 4 months now, we have gotten support of a second lawyer who supports us in the area of open source tooling and open source, let's say, infrastructure and SaaS. And on the other hand, we have an IP support who supports us more in the direction of having open source in the embedded product and external distribution. So we have a split, a work split here with our two lawyers, and it's really great if you have people on board, for example, our new support, who already committed to open source projects. And this was a great achievement to have him in the OSPO as support, because he know the needs of the community, he know the needs of the developers, and he has this legal background, which is, I don't know, 1 in 1,000 coincidence. But we are very lucky to have him on board and to do it in a more pragmatic way than just having the approach of, it is all danger and you need to be aware of everything, and to have more a closed or a narrow use case for open source. We spoke with purchasing also to have the capability of anyone where we intend to do business with on dealing with open source. So purchasing has been trained as well. We have our development colleagues who can book our online trainings as they need them. We are just releasing a new maintainer training maybe next week, when all the community reviews internally are done. We have a training more specialized on the legal aspect and on the linkage aspect of, for example, weak and strong copyleft licenses. And this is where I see an OSPO as being the central part of information and your partner in crime. This means an OSPO is in the middle from consumption, taking the open source code and bringing it into product, maintaining it, but giving it also back, of course, to the outbound part of the process, where you have deliveries to your clients, where you do the contribution actually, and also the software inventory updates. Some of your projects may need a long-term support. In my honest opinion, it's still an underrated work package because it means a lot to be able to maintain the vulnerability information for a typical automotive product of, I would say, 20 years lifetime. This has implications on how do you archive software, configuration management, speaking in automotive spice terms, but also technically. Do you know that you use the tools you have in 10 or 15 years? I think no one of us knows that yet. So this is, of course, oh, in my opinion, still an underrated process part. Now we're coming to the part where I share a bit of the details, what we have done in the last few years. So officially, we kicked off with questions, and the questions were like, am I allowed to? What if I? Where can I find? Do we have training available? And how to handle things. And this was end of 21, beginning of 2022. So in 2022, we had three major challenges. For example, that we didn't have standardized processes. We did not do compliance check in such a depth that we do it now. And the awareness of open source compliance and open source use was not given. It was more the mindset of we're not allowed to use open source at all. So we started and kicked off the open source program office in a very narrow shape. We started with the compliance part and the training part to tell people how to use open source properly. So this is the compliance and consumption part. I think it's a bit special that we are not embedded in each of the development processes as, let's say, in a special activity. Rather, we decided to go for a plug-in principle. This means all what we do as the OSPO is like a module you can plug in and plug out to your processes, which definitely has a lower entry border and it raised less questions from the developers. The reason why we did this is also to have not to repeat process steps where it's pretty clear that no open source OSPO services are required. So we did not want to overburden developments where it is clear that no open source is in scope, but also have a chance for these projects who are, let's say, more on the fancy part of life, like apps, SaaS solutions, or remote diagnostic stuff, where we do have potentially open source in that they can make the best use of our services. This means being set up as an internal service provider. Um, this was taking half a year to be accomplished until also the first process drafts were available and the team was formed. We are 6 people at the moment, whereas we have one product owner specialized on tooling and integrations to CI/CD pipelines. And I have one lady with me. She's our inner source ambassador. And yeah, we have more, the other colleagues are focusing on the code audit part, on the license analysis, and on the consulting part. One of our first thing was we collected the knowledge we had as a team in an internal knowledge base where we have articles on copyleft, on lawsuits, on how to integrate, how to scan, how to prepare, how to exclude. What do you do with patents in open source and these kind of let's say beginning questions when you start an OSPO. We just wrote all the things down we knew and made it to our internal knowledge base. To access this knowledge base, we built up one website, and one of the things which turned out very well and helped us a lot as being a service provider was that we created an app where everyone has access to in the company and they can raise a request. We have some default information we need to collect, like the project, the customer, the cost center of that project, and this is collected via an app We receive automated emails. Hey guys, there was a new request. Please take action. We do our sprint planning then because we work in Scrum as a framework. And then we assign this to one of the team members. We have quite a good relationship to some of our projects. They come again, and you get a relation to your clients, which is great and it's helpful. And what also was very helpful, and this was the first touch point I had with Simon back in 2022, was that we needed a license catalog. And this catalog was a spreadsheet wallpaper where we collected or had all the SPDX licenses in, so roughly around 400, with different use cases, a risk-based estimation, where to find the license text, and this was taken as a base for a second app. We call it License Dashboard, where everyone in the company has access to, and they can just type in the license and they get the basic obligations out of that license right at hand. And that's the most frequently used part of our website. And that's great because it shows interest. In 2023, we had the first extension of our framework and of the to-dos of the OSPO. So we included now community engagement, so being part of working groups, contributing to projects, and also we started to foster this cultural shift. It will be the major topic for 2026, that's for sure. And contributing to open source project is mainly under the Eclipse Foundation. We're part of the SDV movement. And for the working group part, I'm also taking part in a few working groups, especially on CRA implementation, automotive safety process. And I would be happy if we have a working group at the Linux Foundation specialized on automotive needs, maybe in the future. And what we did in 2023 was we set up this supplier assessment framework. So based on the ISO standard, we developed a catalog of questions together with time to act and a set of criteria, and we can now basically reach out to our suppliers and do an assessment on our own to get a maturity declaration or estimation at the end, which helps during the supplier management process, especially supplier selection process, to find the right partners. We had the first definitions with our cybersecurity colleagues. How do we want to monitor the potential vulnerabilities we get from open source code? So we defined the process interface, the email template for notification, but also the threshold where we say this is something people need to take action on, and we need to inform the cybersecurity engineers that who are dedicated to the project. We also released, or were released with our processes in the ZF Central process set. I would call it version 1 because the version 2 is just on the way to be released. And this was our first process release. We also defined which reports we the standard set of reports we're going to provide to our projects, including an SPDX bomb. We developed the customer portal, which you will see in a few weeks on our website linked as well. And will be the portal where we put the open source code and share it back to the community. Also, the inner source platform first increment was released. It's a marketplace where people can see all the inner source projects we have and have access to the repository so that they can start contributing there as well. This was also the point in time where we had the readiness assessment with Simon and where we identified the first gaps. And we also had a review of what the OSPO is doing together with Gail from the Eclipse Foundation. But we can do more. And as we see in OSPO being designed to be the center of competence for each organization consuming, producing, or using open source software, yeah, the fourth path was missing. And that's what we did in 2024. We became fully operational. This means we're supporting 4 pillars of our flower I showed in the beginning. And we had some great achievements in 2024 and 5 as well. I don't want to hide here, so let's dig deeper. Um, it was nice being in OSPO. It was nice what we have achieved already, but the strategic part was, I wouldn't say lacking, but it was not as good as it could be. So we defined the corporate open source objectives together with our higher management. We worked on a corporate open source strategy. Um, First huge success here was the release of our open source manifesto and the first version of the open source policy. The manifesto is our commitment towards the community to share back and to appreciate open source as the cool stuff it is. And we also highlighted this in our policy in such a way that now using open source is engaged, and this mindset of we are not allowed to use it at all is going to decrease over years now. At least that's our plan. Another great success was also to have the go live of our website, which summarizes what we're doing, what an OSPO is on our point of view. You will find the manifesto list linked there, and also the news. And since last week now, also the repositories we're contributing to. Then we embedded the supplier development interface agreement in the global purchasing and supply management processes, and we developed more trainings. And also we did the first, not the first, but we processed some integrations with also special cases, like if you have package managers, npm, Conan, name it. What this does this apply to your CI's integration of the tool we use? We're using Black Duck here since years now, and also we were asked to update the policies which were given by legal and the open source policies in the tool. So this is a handshake between tooling and execution and legal as an input. And finally, beginning of 2025, we had the external third-party certification done, and one of the next slides, Simon will tell you how the process works. I'm summing up this chapter here with the benefits I see when you have an OSPO in your supply chain is definitely you will increase the trust and reliability along the supply chain. You will have an improved collaboration between the external partners and the community. And since you constantly review your processes and the activities you do, you become more and more efficient in your process execution, but also in the overall efficiency of your project. What we are going to work on this year will be, as I said, open source and inner source cultural shift. We will be having some great meetings with colleagues from Bosch or Daimler or other people who went through the same um, with the mindset change. So I'm looking forward to this kind of exchange. We want a bit interact more with the community and the interaction with the community. We're analyzing the impact of the CRA to our open source processes, and there was coming an update of the German liability directive, and we're gonna need to analyze the impacts here as well. As I said, I'm part of one of the working groups who's focusing on how to standardize open source software in a more, let's say, safety reliable context, defining the tool chain and the processes to reach that. And these are our topics for this year. And now I'm happy to hand over to Simon.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. I hope you can hear me very good. Um,
That's okay.
Perfect. So now I would like to give a very brief overview actually about the certification process, how we do it actually, how we have done it for ZF and also for other organizations. First of all, yeah, I want to thank Sarah especially, yeah, for the support and also for the great job she has done with her team actually for ZF. I remember when we started at ZF, there was basically nothing, yeah, just as you mentioned, Sarah, before, yeah, and within the last 3 years actually, she has really built up a great OSPO, yeah, and with a really great success actually now in ZF. And yeah, the result is actually the successful ISO certification with a very high percentage, what we can see here. Also, I would like to thank Shane for the support, right? And yeah, so how do we do the certification? So first of all, we have seen some challenges, right? Or ZF has seen some challenges in terms of open source. As I mentioned before, there was basically, yeah, nothing. As you mentioned before, Sarah, yeah, open source was not really used in ZF. Yeah, now it's widely used, I would say. Yeah, and very sophisticated used. So we actually, from time to act, we started to support ZF with, let's say, basics actually. Yeah. Um, and at some point, SADA and ZF has decided to take an official third-party certification. So typically, our approach is always the same. Yeah, first of all, we do a maturity analysis for our customer, in this case, ZF. Yeah, so we want to see where we are actually. Basically, the maturity analysis can be understood as an audit light, actually. Yeah, so we follow the same standards, we follow the same requirements, and we conduct more or less the same assessment, just in a light version, and not with the official certification body, actually. Yeah. Based on the maturity analysis, we have some kind of a gap analysis and a gap assessment. Yeah. So we see, okay, we have the requirement one, for instance, yeah, which has not been fully met yet, and we find the following gap actually to meet the full requirement. And there we derive a gap analysis and our recommendations. Yeah, and based on our recommendations, ZF or any organization actually can then go ahead and yeah, work on closing the gaps. When the organization, when ZF felt, okay, now we are ready, we are good to go for the official certification, then the real certification process starts actually. This one will be carried out from our certification body. So this is a group company of TIMETOACT Group, as we need to remain independent, right? And the consulting part needs to be separated from the compliance and the certification part. So here we have an official certification body, and then yeah, the official audit will be conducted. Now, what has ZF achieved? So they have a rating of 95%, which is yeah, which is again plays back to the great job Sada and her team has done actually. So you know, 100% is nearly, I would say, unrealistic, right? Because you can always find some room for improvement, but 95% is really, I would call it like a best practice result actually. They have achieved the certification, of course, then with it, yeah. With the official certification, there is a yeah, proof of the image and also of yeah, displaying actually compliance with the requirements and adhering to, let's say, the quality standards actually provided by OpenChain. Right. Can we go one slide further, Sarah?
Sure.
Very good. Here, I would like to yeah, detail a little bit more on the gap assessment actually. So we have it clustered in the domains, yeah, and then we have seen the requirement itself, and we also have an observation actually. So what we see actually in our gap assessment, yeah, and based on that, of course, we have some recommendations. Yeah. Um, Basically, what we found for ZF are those 3 bullet points here, yeah, which we have listed here. And yeah, at the end of the day, we have worked with Sada then together, yeah, on solving it and actually, yeah, solving those gap assessments. Maybe Sada, you want to, yeah, provide a little bit more details on the individual gaps actually and how we could solve them actually at the end of the day.
Yes, of course. I have a some notes in the following slides, but I can do it verbally now, no
Yeah,
issue.
then not to
So
know.
on the first part, the program foundation was that we were lacking a policy, and this was the point which took us the most time. So it was roughly 1 year and 3 to 4 months until our policy was released. And the important part when you set up a policy is come up with a draft. It is great if you have a working group for policies. It is also great if you have a framework for communicating policies, which helps a lot to spread the news, so to speak. But it is better to come up with a proposal, and one of the resources we had here was the policy template from the to-do or of the to-do group, but also we took internal policies as a reference, how it needs to be formulated, which are the typical chapters and headlines in do you have a template? If so, use it. It helps because people starting from scratch, creating a policy, this will take you longer because people need to, or sometimes focus on the things which are not there yet, rather than discussing on, hey, we need a change in this and that chapter. And so we took the reference material, we took the expertise of the OSPO team we had, but also we had legal, of course, joining us here. And it helped a lot to use the template, to follow the policy process, and to have a team on board with more than 7 years of experience each. And our first draft of the policy was very long. It had around 11 or 12 pages, if I remember right. Very detailed, laying down the responsibilities, the authorities of an OSPO, speaking about inner source. And during the entire policy process, it was more and more clear that on this high level of document, the policy is the ZF, the highest document you can have, which is valid for all the employees worldwide, nevertheless of the country. And you don't need that much information on such a high level. So this is one of our lessons learned. I wanted to share a bit later, but I can do it now as well. So being on this high level, we focused on a guidance, what open source to ZF means, how it should be done, and the basic with the OSPO in, with legal in, and an escalation path. But the most important part was to add the direct link to our dashboard I mentioned a few minutes ago, as the main source of information. If somebody wants to use open source in a product, what does he need to do? So we more or less had on top level the rough framework. We detailed it out with links later on, and we have subsequent processes which are also interlinked in the policy. For the second part, contribution and community engagement, we added a dedicated process in our process set, as the policy was formulated in a way that it does not explicitly forbid contribution. Was a huge benefit, so that we were able to create this sub process for contribution. It's very lightweight, so people just need to say that they have done, or let's say that there is an evidence that they did 2 trainings, one for open source contribution, the other one for data protection and trademark and patent rights. And then they can sign up as a contributor. The supervisor of this colleague needs to approve the project he or she is going to contribute to, and that's it. That's very lightweight. So the focus was not on having 1,000 rules for contributing, rather than doing the education part. So these trainings will take up to 3 hours in average, and then you're good to go. And also the understanding open source community engagement was or is now a sub process in our part, and a document, let's say a work instruction, how to do proper contributions, because work instructions are not on the high level as a policy is. And from a policy release process perspective, you don't need the same signatures on a work instruction than you need on a policy level. Our policy levels are signed off by the board of management, and you can imagine that it takes a while to have all the signatures done together. Do you want to add something here, Simon? You're muted in case you're talking.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much. No, I think that you explained all the relevant parts. I just want to mention again what you mentioned already. The most important part was for sure the policy part, especially when you're working in a large organization like ZF, creating a policy document and a binding document which has a relevance for the whole organization is a quite complex part. What I have also learned, right? So I think this might be interesting also for some attendance here, if they're also thinking about creating this kind of document. Yeah, so really, yeah, make sure that you have enough time actually for this policy releasing document. But I think beside that, all the gaps, yeah, were fulfilled 100% at the end of the day, right? And this leads then actually to the high percentage of the certification. Yeah. No, that's it from my side, actually. Thank you very much. I will post here a link in the chat. So if you want to have more information about the certification, feel free to contact me or to contact Time2Act. And then, yeah, we will reach out. And if you're also interested in a third-party certification. Thank you very much. That's it from my side. You will take over, Sarah?
Sure. A minor hint from my end. We released a joint case study in written form, also with Time2Act when we did the certification. So maybe Simon can add this link here as well. Be great.
Yeah, we'll do so.
Okay, going further. How we use resources from the community to achieve what we achieved in 2025. As I said, we had resources in use from the inner source commons for our inner source process and portal, from the to-do group for the management and policy aspects, and of course we had the best practices, the trainings, and the material from the OpenChain project for achieving the ISO 52330 understanding and interpretation guideline, and finally the audit. So if I'm asked which hints would I give for the policy part, who needs to be involved is the main question. You can have 50 people joining this movement. That's great, but I'm not sure if this will be efficient. So make a core team to write this policy draft. Find out who needs to review your policy document later on. Is it the board of management or is it C or B level management? What is the governance level of the policy? And this was a hard learning for us because of its broad scope, being valid also for everything which is around open source. It created a huge wave of questions, especially when we speak about tooling, infrastructure, and SaaS as a use case. So the second version of our policy is explicitly narrowed in scope now for using open source for embedded product and external distribution. This helped a lot because internal use of tool is now separately governed in a document and process one level deeper than a policy is. And of course, you need to set a validity scope. Is it really valid for all the people, or maybe just for people who are dealing with open source, actually, like software developers, testers, project managers, but maybe not for project management officers? That's the questions you also should be clear of when you start creating a policy. And make yourself aware of the review cycle this policy will need to go through. As I said, it was 1 year and a bit until it was released, but this included 4 review cycles here in the organization. Others may do it different. I don't know that. I just can speak of ZF here. Then you have the draft of your policy open for review. Be clear which use cases you want to cover. Do early and incremental reviews. Fail often. That would be a good hint. And yeah, when you have the list of people who are responsible for the formal review, you can already start to plan your awareness campaign because it is quite sure that it gets approved. And you can start building up the trainings for your policy, where to find it, how to interpret it, where are the resources, where to find the processes, and all these questions you can already start then. And you can, of course, start the rollout and communication to the teams. So that has a framework. So there are some auto-generated emails to the team leaders and managers who then communicate new policies to their team members. This is really a great help here to spread the news. For processes and procedures, I would say it's a good practice to have the OSPO as a core team, but on an extended team, you will need to include legal and IP, purchasing, supply and quality management, and also you need to be clear about the responsibilities and authorities, especially when it comes to license approval, release recommendations, or supply assessments. For the procedures, I would recommend, well, let's say one of my former mentors said don't have more than 5 boxes in the process. So I try to keep processes very lean and efficient, but at a certain point of time, I may need to explain deeper level of process activities, then go for sub processes. It's easier to read for people. And plan your reviews, plan your approvals. And if you're set up like we are with being a service provider and a plug-in principle, you need to define your entry and exit points with the process owners of other processes like project management, purchasing, supplier management, name it. And these needs to be divisionally aligned, especially in large corporations like we are. In the rollout phase, I would recommend to have a collection of trainings like the governance system, the policy, about inner source, about contribution, about maintaining, of course, about legal and liability aspects, how to do a proper code audit is one of the trainings we have. And yeah, start interacting with your community in your company. We, for example, have a monthly roundtable. In August, we have again an external speaker. For example, we have our annual FOSS summit, and we have, of course, internal communities where we do update with news and interact and foster knowledge exchange. And having that said, was my last slide, and now I'm happy to take your questions.
All right. We have quite a few people in the audience, so everyone is welcome to join in and jump in with a question. I'll get started with probably a question that everyone asks. What was the greatest organizational challenge in terms of communicating the value or communicating the rationale for the time investment on this? So to give that context, in a lot of companies, people are under, quite a bit of pressure. How will this make us money? Why should you be doing that this week?
If I would limit this question a bit, why would I make use of an OSPO as a service provider? I would say to do risk mitigation, and because our processes are set up in such a way that you have this plug-in principle, and that whatever happens in the code audit path could be theoretically also a black box to you. This means you give us a request, and at the end you get your reports, and there are no. Yeah, it's a happy land for the developers because they don't need to take care about all the nasty stuff in the tool. They don't need to take care of the integration, and they just need to support us when we go back or come back with questions. So it's pretty easy for the projects to take our services and to go to the OSPO and ask questions. If you ask me the wider scope, why to use open source, it's because the days are over where we can develop things multiple times, even within the same company. And it is clear that we are in a rough situation at the moment, and we do not have the time to waste resources on developing now the wheel fifth time. So rather than we encourage becoming a part of the community and supporting our strategic open source projects, be it maybe with a funding in a few months or be it with a contribution, not just code, but maybe documentation, maybe a bug fix, maybe a good feature request, or even a feature implementation. Support has many faces. And it was a broad move with this memorandum signed by 11 automotive companies, including ZF, a few weeks ago to show that interest in developing as a joint force and not to invent the wheel 5 or 6 times.
That's a great answer, and it seems to align with history as well. For instance, if I recall correctly, some years ago, the essentially the Bosch OSPO, Bosch Digital at the time, kind of started out with this question of, are we a cost center? Thinking it through, and actually became a service provider across the company, and of course, just billing for the time they were doing. But it turned out that being a service provider with this optimization was providing value to the company to the extent that Bosch Digital was a profitable subsection of Bosch. It was like, okay, this is really helping these departments. We want help, which is a great way to phrase it.
And
Does
on our end, it would not have been working with the strong leadership support we had the last 3.5 years. It required a good amount of money in funding at this OSPO, so I'm very happy that we still have this broad support up to the board. Our open source program office is in August, part of our supervisory board day, to highlight what we do in open source and how important this topic is as, yeah, one potential lever to survive the automotive crisis, being honest. I mean, it's a huge challenge for all the automotive suppliers.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, thank you very much. That's a really good answer and much appreciated. I'll pause here. We have quite a few people on the line. Would anyone else like to ask a question? I say that and I just saw one. Alexander from Electrobit, what is your usual way to communicate an SBOM to your customers?
So once we complete the code audit, we do a subset of standard reports, which includes the SBOM as a JSON format, and we provide it to our projects, our internal customers. We communicate clearly that it's now up to the divisional definition of config management processes where they need to store their SBOM finally. And usually they are shared either by portals some of the OEMs have where we can upload it or with the release documentation at a point in delivery. Did this answer your question, or do you have something specific you want to know?
Second, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Here. Okay. So point is, it's a matter of what do you communicate? So how many details, each package, or do you have proprietary knowledge that you usually don't share?
If we have some proprietary aspects, we call it as a third-party proprietary asset. And if you want to have more details to it, you may reach out then to the project manager, who checks your specific project NDAs you have with the third-party supplier if you need, and if you can and are allowed to share this information. So from an SBOM
Okay.
perspective, it is labeled as a third-party proprietary asset.
Okay.
And
Good.
for open source packages, actually we do, if we have transitive dependencies, we go one level at the moment. If you have direct dependencies, the same. And it's marked then as the license, the package URL. I would say the standard information you have in an SBOM.
Okay. Thank you.
And anyone else having a question can feel free to unmute themselves. Though we're nearly at the hour, so in case we need the wrap-up question, I'm going to throw one to Simon, which is, your experience working with ZF on this. That experience no doubt helped refine the process approaches of time to act as well. Do you think that that type of learning will potentially help increase the speed or get ahead of challenges in future certification as well? In other words, is it likely to get more easy to do third-party certification as more and more happen? Is that process going to help? Do you think?
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a learning on both sides, right? So I mean, it's not like that we came to ZF as the, let's say, people who know like everything. Yeah. We also had to learn a lot of from ZF and also from Sarah's expertise, right? So it was definitely a learning on both sides, I guess. Yeah. And I definitely think that the future certification and the future consulting and maturity analysis can be done much more efficient, I would say. Yeah. And yeah, so I definitely appreciate all the support we also get from SEDEF and all the knowledge we also get from SEDEF actually. Yeah. So for us, it was also very, very helpful actually. Yeah.
Hey, in that case, I have to say thank you so much. This is a great case study. It's one of first case studies in a couple of months. I've actually been tremendously excited to record this one because we did our announcements. We've been talking about getting this case study out, and we just have a ton of material about everything that ZF and Time to Act have done together, and it will help a lot of people. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Simon, and have a beautiful
You're
day.
welcome.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
and the
much.
same to you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye all, and have a wonderful summer holiday when it comes.
Thank you.